Welcome to Couch Chats. We are here with real and raw conversations on the couch. We're not actually on the couch right now, but this is where it started, okay? So, today, in the hot seat, I've got Danny Foley, the one and only, the man of the people, born and bred Wigan man, my brother, the freedom fighter, and modern-day Robin Hood. Yes, you know it, people. This is what he's been doing, saving the people, yeah? So, I've got my brother on the couch. Obviously, you all should know me as Will Power. So, today, bro, it's good to have you here, mate.
Wagwan.
What's a guan, man? And we're going to get into that in a minute, actually. We're going to go back to your room. Yeah, you know, I'm just glad that I've got you here, and I'm bringing this interview out there to the people, because we have kind of brushed on a few kind of topics and got into our lives. But this time we're going to dedicate an hour where we've been going in. You've just gone in on me. I'm going to go in on you. Yeah. And I know that I know your journey, and I want the people, out there to hear your story and to hear, what it was like for you growing up, what got you into some of the things you've got yourself into, what caused the transformation that has you to be the shining, beautiful man that you are today. So, firstly, how are you, mate?
You know what, bro? I'm really, really good. I mean, I say this every day. It might sound really cheesy, but I woke up not in a cell, not 6 feet under. I've got the pleasure of your beautiful face looking back at me. You know what I mean? Life's good. Can't go wrong.
Yeah. Perfect. And then, it's been a year since we started Couch Chat.
Happy anniversary. Come on. Yes. Happy anniversary, brother.
So, we made this announcement quite a while ago that we'd be taking this next step, but things have been happening. So now we're taking that fucking next step. So let's get into the grips of your life. Yeah. Because we're going to keep this to an hour. I could talk for a long time.
Oh, yeah, I will have more than an hour.
Because we've had
rabbiting on before.
Yeah, he's doing this for the camera, bro, by the way. He's different than this a minute ago.
Showing off.
So, bro, obviously, we've got to know each other a lot over the last couple of years. And then we've, put Couch Chats together, real and raw conversation on the couch, not in the kitchen. Because they weren't real and raw conversations.
You were, mate.
And that's true, innit? We're going to get onto your kitchen parties in a bit. And your fucking house parties that you used to throw. Because I wasn't the only party starter around there, I heard. You were, yeah? So, before we get into any of that, let's rewind it back, right? Let's go back to the earlier days. That's what I want to know. So, where did you grow up? Where were you born? What was early life like for you?
Okay, so we're going to take it right back to the beginning. What I'm about to announce is going to disappoint a lot of my fellow Wiganers, but I actually wasn't born in Wigan. I was born in Bolton.
Bolton? Fucking knew it. You look like a Bolton.
Sorry. I'm going to disappoint and let down a lot of people. I was born in Bolton. Mum, Ursula.
Ursula?
Yeah. Dad Wayne. They weren't together very long. So essentially, I was raised in a single parent family and moved back to Wigan. Brought up in Wigan, which is capital of Manchester. But it's a working class town in the east side of Manchester. A little bit rough, a little bit raw around the edges, and that's got a lot of good early memories. I've got a lot of tough early memories as well, and that's the basis of the man that I became today. Sort of those times in Wigan, sort of rolling around the town centre, rolling around some of the estates, also over the fields and the woods, back to where I was from. Made a lot of friends, made a lot of enemies, and made a lot of mistakes, but also a lot of what happened in those days contributes to the work that I'm doing today.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, going back to, because, I've got a few little bits of nuggets from you over the time and before this. And when you were younger, your dad wasn't around, was it?
No, my dad wasn't around, and I want to sort of say this, in front of the camera now. Me and my dad have a very good relationship now, but actually at that point, I felt abandoned. I probably didn't see him for about, age 1. Now, obviously, I'm pretty sure he didn't just say, like, fuck Daniel off. He's going, we've got a good relationship now, and I understand that. But at the time, it felt like I was abandoned. And so anyone who's grown up in a single parent family, regardless of how amazing that person is bringing you up, my mum was amazing, and I had an amazing stepdad as well. Regardless of how good they are, when you've been abandoned, it's like imagine what we've all experienced heartbreak. Now imagine as a child waking up every day you're waking up and having your heart broken every day, thinking your dad's going to ring you. Now again, it's nothing bad to watch. My dad is a top bloke, and we really really get on now. But that was how I felt every day. And psychologists will tell you that when you've been abandoned, or you feel like you've been abandoned, everything that then happens in your childhood, you take on as your fault. Yeah. So there's a lot of shit going down in my household that I shouldn't really have been privy to, I shouldn't have been part of, but everything that happened I then took on as my fault. And then on the back of those things happening, I had to essentially turn my feelings off. My nickname is the Iceman. I've got it tied on my back because essentially I had to become emotionless. I had to look after my mum to a certain extent, and also I've got a brother who's 12 years younger than me. I had to look after him from things that were going on. I had to almost raise him to show him how to be a man and a lot of experiences. So it's that dreaded T word that we always talk about, working in the therapy and the coaching and the mentoring world, that trauma. So there's a lot of things that happen in your life stem from that trauma, and that for me was a big thing.
That's difficult, that. So did you feel that you had to grow really, really young, or in some respect? We're going to get into your childish behaviour in a minute. But you know what I mean? Yeah, because Dad's not around. You've got your stepdad and your stepmom. So was he there from a young age?
Yeah, probably from about age 6. We got married when I was 7, and with respect to Jeff, he was a great bloke. He dedicated a hell of a lot of time to remember going play football with him quite a lot, and he was a top bloke. But the bottom line, I don't want to sort of gossip too much about him and his relationship.
Yeah,
they shouldn't have been together,
right?
And a lot of things happened on the back of that.
Yeah,
that probably as a child I shouldn't have witnessed. And what, in my opinion, I had to do is I had to choose. Right, okay, am I going to be defeated by this? I'm going to be a little bitch. And I remember thinking at the time, or do I kind of just switch my feelings off and be immune to it? And we all know what happens when you switch your feelings off and you don't deal with things. It manifests itself in generally other negative behaviours. And that's what happened up until my 30s, and I'm 40 now, and things still happen, unfortunately. Yeah. And I think one of the biggest revelations I had a bit of a mishap this year, which I've told you about. And one thing that I did that came up from that is that I had to let go of that part of the childhood that I missed, that I felt like I missed out on. Yeah. So those things have a ripple effect and can haunt you for many years. But yeah, I'm alive.
Yeah. You're alive and do very well, mate. Thank you. You're shining. I like it. So I want to stay a little bit more on that earlier life, and then we're going to get into what went down midlife. Got a couple of midlife crises already.
Not so bad.
Big waste up calls, death and rebirths. We all know about them, don't we?
We do.
So you said to me that you were around. You had a lot of strong females around you when you were actually younger. Would you just say you were raised at an earlier age more by these stronger females? And if so, what was kind of the impact you think that's had on your life? Has had you have more respect for women, not respect women, feel that men were dickheads? You know what I mean? Like, what was?
So it's really interesting because it's two-way. So my mum was a very, very strong woman.
Yeah.
My nan was a very, very strong woman. My nan was brought up in a fatherless household. Now, you imagine back in the World War, it was the 40s and the 50s.
Yeah.
You what was called a bastard child back then. He's tough. That was like, oh my God, unheard of. So she would have had a lot of shit. Now, she had to grow up, like I had to, very fucking strong.
Yeah.
Now, I think part of that strength I loved about her, and I loved about that she passed that on to my mum. But if I'm being completely honest with you, a lot of that strength as well, there was a lot of toxicity to that femininity as well.
Yeah.
And that's obviously, me witnessing that toxicity has also influenced the way I've chosen my partners and the way that it's almost reflected in my relationships too. So on the one hand, it's really good because I love strong women and I respect them. But on the other hand, what I've also done is it's affected me, and it's almost my choice in partners has manifested itself in choosing toxic living as well.
Yeah.
Which so it was interesting. There was, and again, my granddad was a big role model. I spent a hell of a lot of time at my granddad's house growing up. He was probably my first and my biggest masculine role model. But then, obviously, growing up in the town that I grew up in, there was a lot of crime and a lot of strong figures in the area, which were positive role models to me. To a certain extent, they taught me values. Criminals back then did have morals, believe it or not. Criminals having morals. But what they also did is they kind of showed me another side of the world that perhaps a young man should have been brought up into.
Yeah, would you say that the morals are more intertwined in this conditional love? So the morals are only with people that they're associated with, or was this actually they would teach you to be a gentleman with people as well? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I don't like how the mafia would look after their people, but if you're outside of their people, sometimes they'd be a bit like...
Well, that's exactly what it was like, yeah. So just to give you an example, if you were brought up and you were shown certain things about sort of what you would do with certain things that you shouldn't have, but also it was our responsibility as well. So let's say, for example, John Smith got caught robbing Granny Brown, then the leaders of that community would insist that, okay, we'd deal with these thieves who were taking advantage of our elders.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by morals. It was those old school values. So obviously you'd be involved in certain crimes, but you'd also look after the community, and the community wouldn't be let to get involved in those crimes as well. It'd be separate from what you were doing. So that's what I mean by old school morals, and things like fighting as well. So if you had a problem with someone, it wasn't like it was these days where a group of 10 guys ballied up and stab one guy up. You'd have a one-on-one straightener, and then you might still not be the best of friends after it, but you'd shake hands and you'd walk away. You'd have your straightener. Old school, which is
old school, yeah.
We don't have that
and traditional values that that could be instead of being about today. So I mean, you had some tough times when you were younger, but you also, by the sounds of it, had some all right.
Some great times
as well,
I'm very lucky. I always had food on my table. Yeah. I always had a roof over my head. We went on holidays and things like that. I wasn't I wasn't raised into some sort of family where there was nothing there. I've got a lot of good, and I'm very grateful.
Yeah. But there was difficulties there, and that did impact you. Like you said, you felt abandoned.
Yeah.
Obviously with your dad. So just to put that in context as well, before I kind of want to move this conversation on. So could you just ring your dad at 6 years old? You just give him a quick call?
No, and I couldn't till I was about till I was 16, and then it was kind.
Did you not have his number, or
no?
Did your mum and him not speak? What was it? Was it?
If I'm being completely honest, I think I'm speaking from my opinion now. Obviously, my mum being sort of broken up with by my dad, or she'd probably class it as being deserted. It probably hurt her quite a lot as well, and understandably so. She left on her own at age 20 with a newborn baby, and in a town where, I remember when we moved to Wigan, we lived in this this terrace out in Henley. It wasn't in this terrace house, and there was no central heating. And I can remember being 2-3 years old. I can actually remember it. There was no central heating in there. There was an old black and white tiny TV. It was basic. It was she had no car. She had no mobile phone. So she got a lot I've got to give her credit for, but I think she also had a lot of resentment towards my dad. Now, at age 16, when I decided to go and meet my dad, I didn't tell her because I was quite scared of him growing up. She was quite a fucking shouty person, put it mildly. And that caused a bit of a ruffle between us two as well. And that kind of was, it's sounded like at that point I thought, fucking, I've got no parents.
Yeah. It must have been difficult. So let's just talk a little bit about school, yeah? So what was going on in school? How was school life? I know that you used to play football, or...
Yeah. I really liked school. I think I was lucky because
I've heard he's quite a bit of a footballer, actually.
But 8 stone ago. I played for pro football team, played at Wigan Athletic. I was half decent looking, and I was the hardest lad in the year. So, and I was...
What age are we talking here? Probably high school time, yeah?
High school time. So I had a good time at school. I was naturally very intelligent, so I was good at the subjects, and I've got a couple of GCSEs. But I know it's a surprise, isn't it?
Is that Lions, man? I thought it was that Lions.
But I never, even back then, I never bought into the system. I never bought into the school. It just didn't feel right to me. Why am I having to memorize this arithmetic? Why am I having to do this coursework? So I just didn't do it. But I cultured because I was quite intelligent, and I went to quite a lot, and I got involved in. That's when I started getting involved in crime and involved in things that I shouldn't have done when I was at school. But overall, because I was a character, because I was quite pleasant, I had good manners. I never had any kind of trouble with teachers, and I wasn't really kind of one of those guys who was suspended all the time. I had a lot of fights when I was at school.
Yeah.
But other than that, I enjoyed school when I was there.
So was, you were in school, you were playing football and stuff like that. And like you said, you started getting into crime at a certain age. So where did that begin to start happening?
So when I was growing up in Hindley, which is like a big plot of town in Wigan, so I used to kind of wander the streets quite a lot. And from a very young age, so I remember I was like 3 or 4 crossing from my granddad's house. There was 18-year-olds knocking around me. When I was like 11 or 12, I was supposed to stay in a certain area, but when we're told that I would always wander off down to where the estates were.
Yeah.
And I remember the age of 11, I remember, if that's what it's his name, but I remember I got on my first kind of beer when I was 12, and you used to have these glass bottles you used to hand back and get 50p back from, because you 70, you got 50p back. And I said, "Will you get me another iron brew or whatever it was?" And he came back with a can of Carling. So I started getting into drinking at a young age, and then obviously weed smoking. And there was always criminals around, so there was the option to get into sort of selling.
You were still playing football at this time?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can do whatever you want, kind of, in football, you're that age.
Yeah.
But for me, how it started was, drug dealing, it really starts a bit later on, but it was kind of robbing. I was a fucking bad.
Yeah.
I'm going to say the shops will have probably been stitching me up and send the feds down, but, I used to go into shops and just rob them blind and then and sell the stuff in school. So, ironically, he said the modern day Robin Hood earlier. I bet people didn't think that was coming.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's how it started off, robbing, and then it started off smoking weed, and then it became ecstasy, which I believe that I had an addiction to from a young age. So it just spiraled from there. And then and obviously being a quite a hard lad, and then the company that I kept sort of became people who were not on the straight and narrow, and people who were probably involved in these kind of criminal activities, and it kind of spiraled from there.
So when did it really start changing and heading in that direction? When did football start getting put to one side? And, obviously it sounds like the thieving was that in school? Did you carry on being a thief? Did you start robbing cars? What was the transition? When did football fall away and more of this criminal activity start coming in?
I mean, I was always, I was always around that kind of life. And when I look back now, it didn't feel like it feels now. It doesn't feel like it was a conscious choice and, there's all these drug dealers around. Where I'm from, it's kind of like what you do. You kind of either lucky enough to play professional sports, or you're lucky enough to be clever and go off to university, or you work in a factory, or you get involved in drug dealing. And I was never sort of a prolific drug dealer. I was never part of a gang, but it just kind of fell into place. So I was always very heavily involved in taking drugs. And then I started working in factories because I didn't really have the qualifications and all the mindset or the inclination. So, the jobs I was in, I was putting fucking cherries on cakes for a living. It was just soul destroying, working in banana factories and dog food factories.
Yeah.
Respect to people who do that, but it's a fucking shit life. Yeah. And it just became a natural thing. It's like, okay, well, I can sell a bit of weed here and there. Okay, I can sell a few pills at the weekend. I can start selling Viagra. And it's like, okay, well, I want to feed my habit of cocaine, so I'm going to sell some to feed that. And it became a thing. And then as I got a bit older into my early 20s, I've always been torn in the Libra. I've always had a bloody balance. I've always gone down the criminal route and then kind of gone back into normality. So I've always tried to have a normal job, and also so I can have legit money going in my bank.
Yeah.
But I kind of got a good job, and then I got qualified, believe it or not, as a professionally qualified financial advisor in my early 20s. Mortgages, and then
I need a bit of
and at that time I'd completely not grafted on the head. I was still taking drugs. I'd not really grafted on the head.
And where are we? Mid-20s now?
Yeah, and I was because I had a good job as a mortgage advisor, and also I had a club event on in Manchester at Circle. Me and Dave Mack had Hidden Agenda, voted best night in Manchester ever. I was only good till, and then in 2007, recession hit. That fucked me up again. So I was like, well, what do I do here? So
So just to summarise this part of your life now as we're moving through it, you were now earning decent money at your normal job.
Legit
money. Crime had backseat.
Gone, not at all. Gone.
Then you were throwing club nights.
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
Yeah, the footballers club. It was
Circle.
Yeah.
I remember Circle used to pop off, mate.
Yeah.
Didn't have any fights outside. Mine were outside it. So, was life going all right then?
Life was going good, man. I was having a little bit of drugs. You know, I had a girlfriend who was a film producer for Warner Brothers, bro. I used to wear sunglasses and rosy beads at night, so I had my hair braided.
Wait, hold on. Was this the time that you were taking a lot of fucking E's?
Do you know what?
You got into E's pretty heavy, actually.
I did do. That was in my sort of 16 to 21.
Oh, right. Okay, so we've gone past that.
So I kind of like made a comeback from that.
Right.
Something wasn't really healed inside me. Like looking back now, I can really feel that something wasn't healed inside me. And then as soon as the recession hit, and I lost all what made me, and what made me was simple to you, the party boy.
Yeah.
And I had money.
Yeah.
And I had my own club night at the footballers' nightclub. So those are the things those are my masks at the time.
Yeah.
Now then that got taken away in 2007. It's like, whoa.
Yeah. So what was at this point now where this first, was this the first time you really had to have a look at yourself properly? Do you know, like before when you came out of the ecstasy period, did you have a look at yourself then, or did you just slowly go out of that?
No, none. I just kind of replaced it with something else.
Yeah.
So for maybe I was in massive amounts of debt because I had to, because I can't have forgot about this. I also had a court case for driving down in Oxford and some other things in court. So I had to spend a lot of my money, my savings on this court case.
Yeah.
I was in court, and because of other things that had gone on, it was touch and go whether I'd go to prison or not. And then I ended up living off the back of credit cards because I had this lifestyle to maintain. I ended up massively in debt, living at my mum's house on a 15 grand a year job. So rather than
now, this is mid-20s now, yeah?
And my family knew nothing about this life I'd been living whatsoever. So I was on my own. I didn't want to tell my friends because I was too embarrassed.
Yeah.
So I was just kind of like treading water and just kind of like looking for little grafts to do and looking for little illegal ways to make money.
Yeah.
And then comes to late 20s, moved to some guy's gaff in Inley. I was living on like a mattress in like a damp-ridden box room. I was living on this mattress on the floor. And, there was a lot of cocaine, a lot of crack flying around. And and I just needed to get out of it. And I then kind of got another decent job, but also was still grafting at the same time.
Did you ever think throughout these challenging times that having you confront, were you bringing this awareness in like, I need to do work on myself back then, or was it just like I just need to sort myself out through making more money or finding a graft at that point?
That was
what I mean.
And looking back, I had no self-respect, and it carried on into my 30s. So I went past went through my late 20s to early 30s, and I was living in this gaff in Wigan. It was just a party gaff. It was literally an open door, and I had all my gear, graft gear just outlined about. So I was of the opinion, well, who the fuck's going to rob me? But I did end up getting robbed. You know what I mean? Well, like every grafter always does. And then 8 years ago, I started exploring spirituality with some friends of ours who we know. But even then, the penny didn't drop that it's all within.
Right.
And I carried on down this route of still grafting, still having my normal job. And then I had this sort of like this other mask come in that I was going to be this great healer because of the spiritual awakening that I was having.
We'll get into that one in a minute.
And it kind of all sort of spiraled until like just before lockdown. And it was, looking back, some of the things that I was involved in, some of the crimes I was involved in, and some of the people I was around, and some of the narrow escapes I've had. I'm fucking lucky that I'm not, I'm still alive, let alone not in a cell. It's like, it's insane.
Yeah. And what drew you towards criminal activity? What was because something must have had you like, oh yeah. But what did you get from it, or what did you get from them people that you were spending around with to be involved in that? What do you think it was? And was it any insecurities going on as well? What was going on?
I think what I'd say, about a lot of people involved in that kind of criminal life is that we all come from a very similar background, maybe like difficult family upbringing, maybe with maybe you've got a parent missing.
Yeah.
So we've all got a lot.
Mainly a dad as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. There are some proper evil criminals, but there's also some proper evil non-criminals. So, all the people who I rolled with were actually very good people. Some of the things that we had to do weren't very nice and very pretty, but they were generally towards other criminals. But it just felt natural to me, and even kind of like now, I'll go into prisons, I'll go into Peru's, I'll go into bail hostels, and I still have an affinity because it's like, yeah, I feel you because I'm from that background. So it just kind of felt natural, and also it was kind of you do have the highs and the buzzes of some of the things that you're doing, and
like an adrenaline
rush, but also it's that kind of like thing of like you can go anywhere in Manchester and people like will know your name or fear you. Girls will love it, and that hedonistic thing to it as well, where it's like a dopamine hit. It's not real pleasure. It's not something you really, really like. Looking back, it's childish and pathetic. But there's something that's kind of nice about it at the time. It's like, oh yeah, I can walk in this club here. I can get a table. I can get a bottle of Grey Goose at a table to put there. No problems whatsoever. It's kind of like that flashiness that kind of brings you that instant dopamine hit, but it's a bit childish and immature, really.
Yeah. Do you know what's interesting about what you're saying? It's just had me think, because you're saying it's natural to you. Now, I wasn't, I sold a few little bits here and there, but from my own taking, really, when I was into drugs and that. I was around a lot of the time people that were involved in crime and that. And I did have there was something natural. I bonded or connected more with those type of people. What do you think that is? Why do you think I'm
going to put something out there.
Do you know what I mean?
I'm going to put something out there, yeah. Now, I don't agree with a lot of drug dealing these days, because what a lot of selling Class A's does these days is it attracts other crime.
Yeah.
It attracts manipulation. It attracts abuse and child abuse. And drugs are very damaging to the community. But who was it that made drugs illegal and why? And also, you've got to look at the fact that, this is just my opinion, that the government are committing massive crimes now in other ways. So are we all criminals?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like drug dealing, whilst it's illegal and it's very, very damaging, I'm not, sort of saying it's good in any way, shape or form. It is just another job. Yeah. And that's kind of like the way I look at it. It's not a job that I would recommend, but also there's things that the government are doing now. And it's like pharmacists, it's almost like pharmacists and chemists pushing certain things like vaccines that haven't been tested properly. Is that as bad as being a cocaine dealer?
Yeah.
You tell me.
So he's going down a completely different route than I thought. This is what Danny Foley does. What I was kind of getting at, I totally hear what you're saying, by the way. But what I was totally getting at is that what was natural about being around these people. Now I can share what I've just discovered now is that I felt that some of those type of people that I felt natural to, they like living on the edge a bit more, and I like living on the edge. I like they chase more adrenaline and highs. I like doing that. There seems to be a natural way in maybe more of what I was like, not so much now. And also there was a rawness about them people. I felt that there was a bit more of a realness around those kind of people that I would spend time with that maybe I wasn't getting. Maybe they were more authentic or something. Now, don't get me wrong, the things that those people were doing or I was getting involved with wasn't integral, it wasn't great, but I guess the relationship was a little bit more open and honest, like you'd say what the fuck you would want to say to that person. You know what I mean?
So it is what it is, yeah. It is the bottom line of it. If you choose trap life or graph life or whatever you want to call it, if you're choosing that life, it means you're not a system person.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that following the system or the blueprint that we've got in this world today is a bad thing.
Robin Hood. I told you.
To a certain extent, it may keep you what you feel is safe.
Yeah.
You study, you memorise, you conform, you repeat, you go to university, you really get a mortgage, get a family, right? And perhaps you will be fulfilled, maybe you won't. For me, that wouldn't fulfill me. So I suppose what I did find with people who chose the other life is they're not following that indoctrination. They're looking for an alternative view. They perhaps didn't fit. Remember that, I don't know if you're old enough to remember this program, you're far off me, but the Raggy Dolls, remember that dolls like you and me, it's like a load of misfits.
Old enough, sorry, mate.
A load of misfits, but in reality, we're not misfits. We just didn't fit into the society that we kind of indoctrinated into. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with going down that path of being safe and secure. You meet a lot of the olders who used to run a lot of gangs and a lot of crime who will tell you, get a proper job. And I agree with it to a certain extent. But for me, I suppose, and it's just kind of just getting present with it now, is that we should have probably chose something legit that was being self-employed. But instead we were self-employed grafters.
Well, this is what I want to bring it to, because, you know, obviously this is about your story mainly, this us sitting down, which I think is important for people to hear. That's why I want to ask these questions. But what would your message be for the younger you, which would represent some of the younger men growing up now at that age, that difficult age of like 16, whatever? What would be, so they don't end up in the crime you got ended up in, which, let's face it, I don't think that's what you would do nowadays as such, would you? If you were going to, you know, what direction would you point somebody like that in now?
It's got to be, and this might sound like a bit of a cop-out and vague, but it's got to be your own direction. In what I would never advise people and say, don't do this, don't do that. I think that's the wrong message to put out, because everyone's their own person. So I would never say to someone, even when I'm mentoring young lads, I never say, don't sell drugs, don't fight, don't do this. I'll say, look, you're your own man, you make your own decisions. If you're going to do something like that, be careful, but also recognise that there's consequences to that as well. But what I would say to someone is, don't discount education. Just because school isn't your preferred choice of education, explore other ways of education as well. Now, what youngsters have got the beauty of these days, which we didn't have the luxury of when we were young, things like YouTube. And you'll even see people like Elon Musk these days who will say to you, YouTube is at least as good as getting at a university where you can learn everything you want to. So find a passion, learn a little bit about it, have some patience.
Yeah, and patience is a big one.
I mean, one thing
thing's fast.
One thing I would say to you that any drug dealer will tell you, or anyone involved in crime will tell you, is that 99 out of 100, it's going to end up in prison or death.
Yeah,
I can vouch for that myself.
Yeah,
I can fucking vouch for it. It does. Not many of my friends are around. They're either dead or in prison. So I can fucking vouch. I think there's maybe 2 of us who've not been to prison. So
yeah. Thanks for sharing that, mate. Okay, so let's move this conversation on a little bit more now, yeah? So you end up in your life at a crossroads. Yeah, there's a turning point that leads you to who you are now. And, you know, and the person you are now is a mentor, coach. You do a lot within the community with the men's work we do. You know, you take care of yourself, you look after yourself, you're integral, you know, you're honest. Don't get me wrong, you still got your flaws like I have in some places. You know, we're not perfect, but you're a whole lot of the real and authentic Danny Foley was. What was the turning point when, what was the turning point?
So it was a 12-month turning point, really. A 12-month turning point. Between 2019 and 2020. So 2019, I was on holiday with my boys in Vietnam. We're at a wedding, having the time of our lives. A lot of the money I'd made to go on that holiday was on the back of criminal activities. Not saying what, but it was on the back of that. I was living off that. I had my day job, but that was just to put legit money in my bank.
Yeah,
this was literally only 5 years ago. So living this lifestyle, thinking I was a badass. Phone call came from one of my close friends. I'm going to say his name because he's one of the people of the reason I do this work, Danny Pitham, and respect to his dad, Roy. He's got the phone call to say Danny's been stabbed to death. And you know what it's like. I've had a lot of phone calls, you know, in 2007, I got a phone call saying my best mate has hung himself. That was another bad one, but this one, it just really hit differently. Because I was in the thick of all this kind of line of work and this lifestyle. And at the time, Danny was at a party that there's all these bad people around him. And it just really hit home. And that's when I started to reevaluate my life. I've still got it's on my phone somewhere. I wrote down, who am I? Why am I here? That's when I started really doing it. And then the next part of it was going to his funeral, having to meet his dad, and you know, I carry so much responsibility to this day. I just feel like if I was living a different life, if I'd have kind of, you know, Danny had an accident the year before, if I'd been looking after him more, I could have stopped him getting killed. And then, you know, the reason we went to the funeral, we weren't big funeral goers, but me and one of my other mates, we kind of thought, we've got to go down and avenge his death. And I'm not a murderer, but it was kind of like on the cards that we had to go and do that. And thought, shit, I'm going to have to do it. And then kind of like had a chat with some people down there. It's like, if you do that, you're just the same as them.
Yeah.
So luckily it didn't happen that way because I'm not a killer. And I'm glad that it didn't happen whilst he deserved it, in my opinion. It's just an eye for an eye thing, but it didn't happen. And then again, I knew I had to get out of that way of life. And then it carried on to lockdown, and God, lockdown, some of the things that were happening, God, we had like substances in the house and the street value of about 70 grand. It was getting big.
Yeah.
It was coming to a head. We had a lot of people around who shouldn't have been around. There was feds knocking around all the time. And there was one instance, I remember the fucking feds were like about 60 seconds coming in, and one of my boys, God bless him, there was like 70 grand worth of this substance in the house. Just put it up his top and jumped out the window of a 2-story flat to save us. Otherwise, that would have been it then. That would have been 10 years in prison. You know who you are. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Then I was having like 7-day benders without sleep because we were partying that bad. I was making that much money. You need to work. You get that much money. Just like buying Louboutins and Givenchy t-shirts all the time.
Yeah.
Stupid shit. And then I kind of had a mini breakdown myself. I kind of split with a girl that I really liked. And for the only time in my life, I felt this pain that wouldn't go away. I thought, there's only one way to get rid of this pain. You know what I'm talking about. And I'm glad I felt it, because up until that point, I've always kind of saw suicide as maybe a bit of a weak thing. But now I understand why people feel like that.
Yeah.
And this pain that wouldn't go away. Like, how would I get rid of it? So I rang one of my friends, and she said, "We still got some sleeping tablets." Was an overdose. I was like, no, let's have a sleeping tablet. And I had a sleeping tablet. I woke up in a better mindset. But at that point in 2020, I decided to knock booze on the head, and I decided to knock selling Class A's on the head.
And was lockdown, this was, how far into lockdown was this?
This was in 2020. So I decided to knock the Class A's on the head.
Yeah.
Luckily, I had other avenues of money. I was into selling bodybuilding supplements and all this legit stuff. And a lot of my customers who would buy Class A's on me would buy the bodybuilding supplements off me. So that was sweet. I didn't really have a problem with that. But what I realised is that when I stopped selling Class A's, is that I had £1,000 a week cocaine habit.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And that kind of like, and I was kind of in and out with that. It was like a big thing. I wasn't like I was one of those people who had to have a line every day to function. It was like weekend, right, I'm fucking having it for 3 days.
Yeah.
There'd be, bad people around there, bad women around there, lots of very toxic things happening, which I won't disclose in here because they're too bad to even mention on the camera. But that continued maybe a year or so.
So let's just picture this a bit more as well, give this some more perspective. So how long before this, because this is when you blinkers started to come on, when your mate got killed. Was that before lockdown?
Yeah, that was 2019, the year before lockdown.
Right, and then you had this crazy couple of years still.
Yeah.
Of like battling between you consciously coming online, you sort your head out and sort your life, but then still being in the mix of it.
Yeah.
Dancing between the two.
Yeah. It was tough, but it had to be tough. It's like that old saying, isn't it? God gives his toughest missions to his best soldiers. And I really believe I had to go through all that shit. And, from the story, I mean, I'm sure people have had it worse. There's people in Palestine who've got no kids and no limbs right now. But it's all relative. And to me, it has been a tough journey, but it's been a worthwhile journey, because now I'm in a situation where, I can work with the likes of you. We can do a lot of good in the community. And it's interesting, because when I go into prisons and I go into care homes, anything that a young man comes to me and speaks about, I can say, do you know what? I've got experience of going through that.
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, you got to this point, right, where you decided, right, I'm knocking Class A's on the head, selling them. Then you had this cocaine addiction. When did you actually how did you sort out that cocaine addiction? It was about my weeks, a lot.
It was rough, bro, because, I was living with people and all my friends.
You were doing it all the time.
And I'm not blaming them. It's completely my fault. Yeah. I take accountability for it all. It's my responsibility, but it's one of those, it's like, you decide to knock it, and then it's like, oh, well, such a body's birthday's then. Oh, such a body's having a bad day, we'll get a bag. And it was just, there was always a reason, or should I say, an excuse to get a bag in. And it was a tough habit. It was a very, very tough thing to break, and I was kind of in and out of it. And then I had a relationship in like 2021, 2022-ish, and it was a conscious relationship. And as we know, with conscious relationships, they really hold a mirror up to you.
Yeah.
Massive mirror to me. And I got triggered by a lot of things. And then end of 2020, we were on and off for a while. End of 2022, we broke up. And I'd saved up about 3 or 4 grand to go on holiday. And I went on a fucking mazza, mate, and just fucking spent a lot in a weekend. Going mass, having people around the house, buying them drugs, buying more booze, in and out the gaff, just doing random weird shit, driving about.
Yeah.
Just went off the fucking rails. Ended up with nothing. And I've been in that situation time and time again. I've got nothing, but I earn money every day because, you know, I've got more doing my fitness supplements or whatever. It's fine. I always know I'll bounce back, and I always do. But at that point, I felt a bit helpless. I thought, I've had enough of this. And I actually really started feeling like an addict then. I started like really craving it. I thought, I really need a drink now, I really need a line now. So I got in touch with my brother from our charity, Band of Brothers, who I live with now.
Yeah.
And I said, I think I'm an addict.
Yeah.
And it took me to AA. The reason I chose Alcoholics Anonymous is because alcohol was the gateway drug for me. And I'll tell you what, like one of the most, you know, I could admit to, you know, being a bad boyfriend or a bad son or a bad friend or being violent or being a drug dealer. But the most embarrassing thing for me in my life, or at the time it was embarrassing, is going sitting in a room full of people and saying, I'm Danny, I'm an alcoholic. It was like, it's utter fucking weakness. That's what I thought it was at the time anyway. It's actually strong looking back. But yeah, and that was like, that was a big rock bottom for me. And yeah, it was. And then I did a few months in AA, a couple of CAs, and kind of like got myself to a certain extent on the straight and narrow to a certain extent. And that was like a massive turning point for me.
Yeah. And when did you, it's great that you actually got to that, you know, that point. And I totally get what you're saying there. Would you say there was a lot of shame in having to admit that?
So, you know, there was admitting I was an addict was shameful. So the actions I was taking, I was like, again, there was some horrible, sordid, seedy things I was doing and spending loads of money on drugs. I don't actually feel any shame or guilt about those. But what I feel shame about is that I was too strong to say, I was too weak to say no. Yeah. That's where the shame.
Right.
The whole shit of doing it. The problem with my shadow is that I enjoy it.
You know,
but I don't really enjoy it. And this is
of course.
I say to a lot of people watching who maybe are having problems with alcohol and drugs now. You're not really enjoying it. What it's doing, it's filling a hole. That's what addiction is. It's like there's a hole in you that never gets filled. So you're chasing filling that hole. Yeah. And what it is, it's quick hits. It's this hormone in your brain called dopamine. Yeah. You get a quick dopamine hit after that line. Yeah. Wears off. Get another quick dopamine hit. And for me,
so it's not real, is it?
It's not real. It's not real pleasure. Yeah. But it's the quickest and most instant pleasure you can get. Yeah. And that's why it's easy to fall into the path of addiction. But what I did find, this is interesting with my journey with addiction, is that what I found now is that I think it's something like 80% of addiction stems from childhood trauma. Now, I only really got over my addiction when I addressed some of my childhood traumas and I fixed my relationship with my parents. That's when I started really kind of not doing it all the time. So that was an interesting point.
That leads on to the next bit. So we've obviously talked quite a bit about healing relationships with your parents. So why did you feel like you wanted to do that, which I think is one of the points that you just made then? And how did you go about that? How's that journey been?
Well, the reason that I wanted to do it is because in 2020, I mentioned that I had a girlfriend that I broke up with. And I kind of thought, I'm a good boyfriend, but why am I having... It kept going down a similar route of... I feel like a good boyfriend, but then something would go wrong. I'd get triggered and I'd get emotional, upset. So one thing was that I'm really mastering my emotions. But I'd not read any Carl Jung at this point. But what I realised is that, hold on a minute, maybe if I fix my relationship with my mum and dad, I would be able to fix my relationship with the opposite sex.
And you felt it was having a ripple effect?
I did, yeah. And at that time, you know, my mum and dad probably don't know this, but even though we'd speak to each other quite a lot, I honestly didn't feel like, probably sounds bad to people listening, but I didn't feel like I had a mum and dad. I felt like very alone. And again, it wasn't their fault. I take full responsibility for myself. But I felt very alone. And, you know, spend a lot of time, you know, I'd go and see mum at Christmas morning, but Christmas night, I'd be off my head fucking sniffing probably on my own.
Yeah.
But I went down the route of fixing it, and then obviously we started having our men's sharing circles.
Yeah.
So I suppose men sharing together helps. And then you advised me and put me down the path of doing a course, transformational course called Landmark. And I tell you what, like if you did a bit of research on Landmark, it probably has certain bits of bad press. But what I found with Landmark, it removed all my limiting self-beliefs and gave me this chance to start again mentally. And what it also did is that it not only transformed my life, but I would say that this program saved my life.
Yeah. And what kind of things is it in the program that you had to do that would say allowed you to kind of almost save your life, is your putting it?
It was all about essentially taking accountability.
Yeah.
So one of the big things that would do is you'd have to, similar to what I suppose they do in AA to a certain extent, you kind of make a list of people that you've maybe had some kind of issues with in the past.
Yeah.
And then in front of the 200 people who are on the forum, bring them up and apologise and take accountability for it all yourself. Well, there's none of this. Yeah. Well, I did it because of you, because you did this. It's like, you've got to take full responsibility for it all. Did it with my dad, nice and smooth. My mum was a different kettle of fish because she's kind of like quite cynical. She's like, why are you trying to apologise? You're all trying to pass the buck on to me.
What's your agenda?
And then, to be fair, I had a lot of therapy with the general that you've had therapy with as well, Safina.
Yeah.
Safina Bolton. And me and her would just, not your kind of therapist where you sit on the couch and put your feet up and moan. It's kind of proactive therapy where you write stuff down. So she'd make me write a list down of all the things that I didn't like about my mum. And then she'd like say, how triggered are you? And then I remember me and Savina would argue because you said, your mum only did that because she loved you.
Yeah,
I went, no, how could she do that?
Yeah.
Like, Savina would be like, no, she did it because you love her. You owe her an apology, Daniel. Anyway, long story short, it was a birthday a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. And it somehow just came out that, and I said to her, like, Mum, you know, like, I love you and I'm sorry for misrepresenting you and doing all these things and all this, and, you know, like, sort of pulling your hair out. And she apologised for some of the stuff that happened growing up. And, you know, it was a good moment. And from then we've kind of built our relationship. And it's good, you know. I'm very close to Mum now. She brings me every day, like a pest. But I wouldn't change it, you know. I wouldn't change it. It was good. And I really feel like that building that relationship with my parents has helped me have better relationships with friends, but also the opposite sex as well. So I would definitely recommend it to anyone who's out there. You know, take a look at yourself and fix that relationship with your parents, because you never know when they're not going to be here anymore.
Yeah. I think the big thing, like you said, is that whole accountability thing, isn't it? And when you see that and I guess when you're younger, it's hard to take accountability for it all. But you have to kind of look at, like, your parents through the lens of maybe they didn't know any better. Do you know what I mean? They were doing their best for where they're coming at. Don't get me wrong, there's some people that do some really awful stuff, and you'd have to go to a landmark leader to discuss how you get past that stuff. But I think in general, most of the time what I see is a lot of our parents are just, and that generation is living out a lot of generational stuff that's been passed on, and they've not had the access to do the work like we have. So I found that I was able to kind of look at them through the lens of they just did the best when they had times when it was challenging.
I mean, here's the way I look at it. Yeah, the way I look at it is that if you allow someone else to be responsible for the way you feel, you're not in control of it.
You're not in control. That's a big.
Take control. I mean, even if someone's done the most blatantly horrible, most nastiest thing in the world to you, you can still take control of the way you feel about that.
Yeah.
So obviously, you know, if someone's punched you in the face for no reason, that's not your fault, but it's your fault how you feel about it. You can even take responsibility for why you're in that certain situation in the first place. There's loads of things you can do, and I promise you, it might sound kind of like drastic and, oh, that's not unfair, it's unjust. It is just, because once you start taking responsibility for your life, that's when you can change things and make an impact.
Exactly. So talk to me about men's work. Talk to me why you want to do it, why you're passionate about it. Yeah.
Men's work, to me, it's vital. I mean, the difference between men and women is that women just talk more in general.
Yeah.
Women speak. That's just what women do. As men, we're almost taught not to speak. Also, the difference between men and women is we don't really have a transformation from adolescence into being a man. With women, they have things like having periods and they've got to sport each other around to talk about that more, like we just said. They almost have a transformation into being an adult from puberty. We don't. And what...
Unless to put on contraception into the big thing.
Yeah, that's another thing, yeah. And, I suppose it's happening to both sexes at the minute. The transformation from being an adolescent to an adult is becoming less and less common and more difficult. But what I can only speak for being a man. And what I'm finding these days is that we've got a massive lack of masculine, or should I say healthy masculine, role models around us. Yeah. Now, I completely believe, and I'm very passionate about this, that the lack of masculine role models is the reason why our society isn't the way it should be, the way we want it to be. Yeah. It's the reason why there's a lot more male suicides. It's the reason why a lot more young men are in prison now. It's the reason why a lot of young men aren't sticking around to be dads for the children. Who've they got setting an example to them? Fucking no one. So again, I can only speak for men because I'm a man myself, and I kind of feel that I don't feel like I have to give back, but I feel like I was put. I feel like it's almost my reason to be here. I feel
duty.
I do. I feel it's my duty. I feel like I'm obligated to actually do something about it. I feel like I've gone through a lot, and I've gone through a lot for reasons. So if I don't pass on these experience and this knowledge to the younger generation, I feel like I'm doing humanity a disservice. Might sound arrogant to some people, but that's the way I feel.
Yeah. And healthy masculinity, what is healthy masculinity to you? What's a healthy masculine man?
So for me,
or knowing now,
for me, being a man, there's loads of different ways of being a man these days. You can be gay, you can be straight, you can be this, that, or the other. Do what you want. I don't care as long as you're not hurting other people. But what I do think being a man is about, whatever of those archetypes you want to fall into, is a set of values and a set of principles. And I think that accountability, leadership, being authentic, having integrity, and I think that also providing a safe place and creating community as well, and kinship, passing on what you know to the next generation. I think those are all values that I would associate with being a man. And also, I think a big one, which I'm not seeing a lot of these days, and I can understand why, but it upsets me, is that standing up for what's right. I don't think we have enough men standing up for what's right these days. People are all quick to be keyboard warriors and put what they think's right on the social media and the Facebooks and be pissed off about stuff. But who's actually out there in the community making a difference? And I'm not saying that what me and you do is the right way. I'm sure there's hundreds and thousands of ways to make a difference. But I want to see men do it now. And by me doing what I'm doing, by working on myself and by telling my story, which, to be honest with you, it's, some bits of telling my story are a little bit embarrassing, but I do it because I really feel that it can make a difference.
So your journey up to now, it's been quite eye-opening. We've had many conversations and waffles. Not the waffles that you had on a Sunday morning.
Waffle.
But it's I think it's great the way that you're able to just kind of be open and be honest and be raw, which is what this whole Couch Chats is about, and what we're wanting to do. And by us being open and honest, we're hoping that other men might find that they can be honest with themselves, and that might ripple into them being honest with someone else, and that'll help them and the community to go out. So I just want to acknowledge you for doing that, for sharing, obviously, your story today. And, you're not involved in criminal activity anymore. You're not you're not being a menace to Manchester. You are being. So, you've made these changes. You've got a legit job. You're doing well at that. You're doing well for yourself. You've got a lot of things under control. You're involved in the community doing this men's work. We're setting this up. You're doing stuff like this. So tell me and tell the people what is next for Danny Foley, the one and only Robin Hood of today's world.
The one and only. So what you're going to see next for me? What's coming on is a lot more community work. I still feel there's a lot more that needs to be done. I feel like I've got a lot more to offer. So I'm going to be doing a lot of work with your good self, Will Power. You're going to see a lot more of us. We're going to be bringing a lot of positive stories to you from other people, from maybe some people who are famous. And we want to keep it Manchester-based for the time being as well. So we're going to be looking to bring some positivity to you and show you and demonstrate to you through the art of storytelling how you can make changes to your life and how you can help other people. I've also got other projects involved with other prominent members of the Manchester community as well, which I'm not going to say too much about now, but they're going to be big things. And I generally aim towards adults these days at the minute, 18 plus. But I'm going to be looking to provide some kind of outreach to the younger generation as well, and maybe set some of an example to them. So for me, it's all about community work. There might be a little bit of love in the air as well.
Way.
But everything that I do, it's all positive, and thank you to everyone for your support. Thank you to you, brother, for your support as well.
Thanks for coming on today, for sitting down, getting real, getting raw. This is the only beginning, right?
All the beginning.
Thanks for watching. Peace and love. Well done, brother.
Cheers, bro.
Yes.